What if I told you there's a teenager in the Premier League right now putting up dribbling numbers that we haven't seen since the days of prime Adama Traore? But the twist is he's not just the dribbler. The data shows he's also keeping pace with the world's best creators, the likes of Lamine Yamal and Arda Güler. 2 months ago, most of you hadn't heard of him. Today we're asking the big question, is he a midfielder, is he a winger, or is he the most unique tactical puzzle in English football right now? Before we get into it, please do subscribe guys, like right now. There is nowhere else you can find unique videos like this that tell all sides of the story. Now, let's get into it with our data genius Spencer. Who is that player?
We are going to be talking about Mateus Mané, who is probably one of the most exciting youngsters in the Premier League this season. I'll be honest, I had not heard of him until just a couple months ago, and I bet most people hadn't because he had not broken into the Wolves first team until this year. So he's going to be a really cool one to talk about, specifically because he's kind of unique. Well, not kind of unique. He's really unique. He's kind of, would you box him more as a midfielder or would you consider him more like an attacker slash winger? Like, what is he now? What would be best for, his future development? And then also, he's got a couple specific traits that are, at least in the data, really, really unique and really, really promising. So, to start just here at the top of the pizza chart, he is much more of a shooter than he is an assister. He shoots a lot from outside the box, he crashes into the box. This graph is comparing his numbers to both midfielders and wingers. So the graph looks very different depending on which data set you use. He either looks like a really advanced midfielder if you compare him to midfielders, or he just looks like a really defensive winger if you compare him to wingers. So they split the difference, and we're just using both in the data set. So obviously, with a lot of midfielders in the data set, he takes a lot of shots, but as well, something that I've seen in data, which we'll touch more on later, through balls, while it is like a really it's like a low sample of action. So like a really good number is completing half a through ball per game. So really low occurrence. But if you look at like historical charts of who had the highest through balls when you look at young players, it's often some of the best creators in the game. So that's a very, very sneaky one that I like to look at of like if they have that. If they don't have it, it's no issue. But for players like him that have it, that's like, oh, I take note of that. As well, just the success rates on a lot of his stuff. He doesn't attempt a ton of long passes or progressive passes, but the success rate is a lot higher than his attempts. There's obviously a lot of quality in there as a player. And then I don't know what other word to use to describe it. He's just a turbo dribbler, even compared to a lot of wingers. He has really high numbers. We're going to touch on on it later, but the rate at which he dribbles per pass received is like Adama Traore level, like of like back when he was like oiling up his arms in baby oil and you just like couldn't tackle him. He's dribbling every single time he got the ball. It's like up there. It's closer to that than it is like a normal player. So the rate at which he dribbles and the success at which he dribbles, that's all obviously really, really promising stuff. Then obviously the downside to that, because we're comparing him to midfielders and wingers, his out of possession stuff isn't going to look great. Also, if you just compare him to wingers, it looks better than this, but it still doesn't look perfect. So if there is a hole to his game, I would say it's probably it's not so much that it's a hole, but his efforts are much more considerably they're weighted towards the in possession rather than the out of possession, which it's interesting because Wolves is, I mean, I guess they have Andre and Joao Gomez to do a lot of the dirty work out of possession, but you think that's a team where out of possession would probably reign supreme because they don't have the ball very much, but that's not the case for him.
Yeah, and I think with the numbers as well, I think it's important to caveat that a lot of Wolves' probably chances they get are from transitions, and I assume that he receives the ball a lot and is told to run, and there's probably spaces left because teams look to kind of come onto Wolves and attack Wolves. And so I think that really helps his profile, that he can carry it through central areas in transition. I think like you said, I think he's so unique because you really would, if you just saw him play, like in any game or whatever, you just would think winger. And I think it's really interesting that he's been able to come through as a central player. It kind of reminded me a little bit of when Raheem Sterling first broke through at Liverpool. They used him as a 10 a lot. And I really liked the ability to like you said, like receive in such a quick fashion. And I think in a league where there's so much blockage in the central area, of course, there's risk that he can kind of get swallowed up into that and kind of go missing a bit. But I think if you have someone who's really nippy and can find those little gaps in terms of the way they drive through the heart of kind of the midfield, then you get real upside there because it's really hard to unlock those areas now. I think having more carriers in central areas to break those structures is going to be a real facet of teams adapting to the new kind of style of the Premier League. And I think the kind of more creative guys who are more about kind of finding pockets and playing passes might struggle a bit more, but being more nippy, I think, could help. And I think the likes of Morgan Rogers is not the same kind of player, but he's a player who can carry the ball through central areas. And I think that we're going to see more of that kind of number 10 at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's generally a trend that I'm seeing in the Premier League for not just advanced midfielders like Mane is, but just midfielders in general. A lot more of the really inspiring ones that are coming through, and ones that would make sense in the Premier League that are not in the Premier League now, but have the physical attributes to make it in the Premier League. A lot of them are more carry first, powerful things like that, like Mane. So one, it opens up an opportunity for you if you can find players that are, more controlled defensive and like progressive type passers, they're going to be more valuable down the line because you're going to need to find people to be able to pair into a pivot with, players that are more like this. But at the same time, there's a very big need for the way the Premier League is played right now for players like Mane. So, yeah, he's definitely got a future. Obviously, he does, but within the context of the game as well. If you look at this is same sample of midfielders and wingers, but this is now all players within the top 5 leagues. So he looks the okay on the one axis on the bottom is shots, simple enough. On the left axis, on the y-axis, it's dribble rate. So as I described before, it's the percentage of passes received that then result in a dribble. He is, I think that puts him third in Europe this season for U21 wingers and midfielders, but he performs more like a winger in terms of his ability to find shots and to just beat his man one on one. Which, if you look at the names that are around him, Jesus Rodriguez, Tony Nusa, and Joel Roca, they're all like traditional wide area wingers that operate in a lot of space and can cut inside onto their favored foot and take a shot that way, and also can dribble because they have a bunch of space to run into. It's they can get a head start or they're left 1v1 against a fullback with not a lot of cover. So the best thing to do is dribble. That's not the case for Mane. Like you said, he's doing this from central areas. So to be in this sort of a territory with these kind of wingers, doing it from central areas and frankly doing it for a team of the caliber of Wolves, at least relative to the Premier League, I mean, it's been really impressive so far this year.
Yeah, and but just to go on to quickly his shooting, because I think his shot technique is like really convincing in terms of I've seen a couple of his goals where he looks confident in front of goal. He shaped one in really nicely, like whipped finish. He just is one of those players that when he gets in and around goal, he looks convincing with the way he strikes the ball. And looks confident to take those shots on, and clearly the numbers back that up. If I just quickly share the type of sport, because I think there is a reason why. Well, I think there's a couple of reasons why he's able to put up such good dribble numbers in this team in central areas, because I do think this is important for him to kind of choose his next move right. Because, if you are playing for one of the top teams, there are going to be less spaces left in those central areas for you to carry. And I think what does kind of help him is having a front two in front of him. I think these guys kind of being able to run beyond is going to take back fours with them a little bit, or back fives, or whatever it is. And that does leave a few pockets for Mane to carry it. And I also think because there are two options there, I don't think he's like an amazing passer, but what he's able to do is, draw people in and then play little like poked passes through, like little short ones in behind, or, more simple sideways, not sideways, but switches out to the sides, where if he does move to a top team, these spaces are going to definitely close up. And that's where you kind of have to think about how you're going to get the best out of him when maybe there is less space there. And I think there's definitely opportunities for players like that still, but the spaces are definitely going to be less. Because what I think probably you see a lot of is this, where the Adama Traore is a great comparison because it's such an invaluable profile for a team like Wolves, because he can take you from literally defending to attacking, and I think his ability to carry is similar to Adama Traore, but I think he definitely has more quality in front of goal, especially with his shooting technique. So yeah, I think that just shows that his next move is going to be important. But there's definitely upside in him as a profile, even for top teams. I do believe that, but it's just about him learning that those spaces won't necessarily be there at his, if he does take that step up, I think.
Yeah, and I'm now going to share the results of two search queries and I'll walk through them. But one of them, it kind of dovetails into we've been talking very positively about him, but there is obviously a chance that he does not, you know, achieve like great heights as a player. He could just be a regular good player in the Premier League. That's fully within his range of outcomes for a number of different reasons. One being it's kind of tough to really make a player like him work because it's while it's a benefit that he's kind of a winger, kind of a midfielder, it's also not a benefit because then it becomes hard to work them into a team. The one name that so this top list right here is players in the Premier League, all positions under 21 years old since the 2018-19 season through this one that had a dribble rate, so dribbles per pass received, of greater than 35%. So you can see the names. He's got the fourth best number. He's between Doku and Minte. You obviously like, oh wow, that's really impressive. That's really what you want to see. But there's one name that I'm going to call out on this list, Joe Willock, who is kind of a similar thing, where kind of a midfielder, kind of a winger, had really a ton of hype back when I guess 2020 would be one of the years, but back a few years ago, and it really hasn't quite materialized. I think because it's just difficult to find the right place for them because in deeper positions in like pure midfield roles, generalists do really well these days, but in the more advanced ones, you need very specialized types of attackers to do very specific things within a team. And if you do something that's really good but different, it's kind of tough to work that into a structure unless that's unless that's the piece that a team kind of needs. So I would say that yeah, while we're being extremely positive about him, there is still that possibility that he ends up somewhere like Joe Willock, where he's a really solid player, but he doesn't really reach anything special. But to close it, I'm going to talk about something positive because I'd much rather be positive than negative. This is the list I used. This is for through balls completed per 90 for U21 players in top 5 leagues this season. This bottom one, I used zero point 0.5, like a half a completed through ball per 90 as like a benchmark for what's really good. I mean, you can see there's only two that have done that this season, but there's five that have done at least zero point 0.4. Lamine Yamal, Arda Güler, arguably two of, if not the two best young creators in football right now, and Mane is on that list too. So to end on a positive note about his profile, it's a really special list that he's on in terms of his creative ability, not so much for the final ball, but to find runners and to play weighted passes that require a lot of vision and a lot of technique at a young age. It's really promising there.
Yeah, and I think that alongside his shooting technique that we've discussed and his convincing nature in front of goal does at least bring me more hope that there's still growth for him, and it's not, well, obviously there's still growth for him because he's 18, but I think there's still upside in terms of what he could be. There's still different ways that you could probably profile him. I don't think you have to put someone like him in a box because there is a lot more to his game than just the carrying, thankfully. I also think with this one, just before we finish, I think people have said he should stay at Wolves if Wolves are probably going down. My thing is I think players like this should always take the step up where they can. I think he you never know what's going to happen in a footballer's career and in a championship season that could go horribly wrong or whatever. I think now is a great time for him to step up. He's shown he can play in the Premier League. I think I'd always encourage players if they can get a move to the Premier League when they go down. I think they should. And he's got a really interesting story. Like grew up in Portugal, came to England, kind of worked his way up some lesser teams. I think came through at Rochdale. So really nice story for a breakout star in the Premier League. Yeah, that's it for us on Mateus Mané. Please do subscribe to the channel. Please let us know who you want us to explore next down below in the comments. And thanks for watching.